So I've been playing Elden Ring along with everyone else, and just wanted to get some of my first impressions, some first thoughts out there, and I wanted to discuss this boss in particular. So aside from the obvious issues that I'm sure everyone by now is aware of, all of the technical stuff, invisible enemies, crashing to desktops, stuttering, huge frame drops, all of that, I've really been enjoying the game, and I've really been enjoying the gameplay. The aesthetic direction is great, the graphics are great, and most of the gameplay changes are great. I do have a few issues though. One comes from the controls and how they've had to compromise to get all the functionality they wanted out of a standard controller layout. Gone is the silly running jump from the earlier games, and having a dedicated jump button is a huge improvement. You no longer have to pause while sprinting in order to perform a roll instead of accidentally leaping away from enemies and getting caught because there's little to no iframes on the old leap. I still find myself pausing to roll when I'm sprinting out of habit, but I'm slowly getting used to the new system. Downside of this, kicking is kind of almost gone. I've learned you can use the D-pad to unequip your main hand, then use the weapon arts button to kick, swap back to your main hand and attack, and you'll get a poise break, backstab to the front riposte kind of thing. But it's really clunky, and I wouldn't ever want to rely on it, so I don't really see myself ever doing it. If I come across shielded enemies, I feel like it's better to just try to circle behind them or wait till they attack to hit them or something like that, which is kind of sad. I really liked kicking in the earlier games. Swapping between one-handing and two-handing weapons is also awkward now. You have to hold one button while pressing another, compared to the old version of just hitting one button. It's workable, but it isn't ideal. The rolling in the game has mostly been nerfed. You don't travel nearly as far while rolling, and sometimes you'll end up still inside attacks or combos that you could have rolled away from in earlier games. The upside, the rolls feel really smooth, and I don't feel like I'm at some huge disadvantage if I don't have the fastest roll. Compared this to Dark Souls 1, where maybe some people can get along with it, but when I have the fat roll, everything just feels awful in that game. Or in Dark Souls 2, if you don't have your adaptation high enough, some fights just become really miserable. And there are some advantages to the shortened roll distance as well. You're able to roll directly next to enemies and still be in range with a lot of weapons to attack them right after they're locked into their attack animation, where in previous games you might roll out of range if you started your roll from too close to the enemy. I'm mostly happy with the difficulty so far. The trash mobs are pretty easy for the most part, which is kind of to be expected in the starting areas. I'm guessing they'll probably get a lot more difficult as I get further into the game. But there's some really tricky bosses you can fight right from the start. My guess is that the developers' intentions are for you to attempt these bosses, get rocked, and then go somewhere else and come back when you're stronger. But I'm very stubborn. If I see a boss, I'm not going to leave until I kill it. I had a lot of fun dying a whole bunch and slowly learning how to do some of these hard bosses without having many levels and without any weapon upgrades. But this boss in particular has really annoyed me. The other ones I fought, it felt completely reasonable to use a two-hander and just roll through everything if you were good enough and consistent enough, but Margit feels distinctly different. It starts off with some really varied attack timings. Some attacks you have to immediately twitch reaction dodge to avoid. Others you have to hold your dodge for feels like an eternity before the attack comes out. I enjoyed figuring those out. I don't have any complaints there. The issues started appearing when I was trying to figure out the dagger attacks. The thrown daggers are great. I really like that you can just sidestep them back and forth without having to roll. It feels really cool. I didn't do that at all here because I was too paranoid about getting hit, so I just rolled through everything. The problem is the dagger in melee. You'll see one iteration here a few times where, if you get close enough, he might quickly spawn it in and take two swings at you, which are avoidable. But the problem is how it interacts with combos. So something I've noticed about this game, compared to previous ones, is boss combos aren't set in stone string of attacks. The bosses are capable of breaking off mid-combo and switching to a different move, or sometimes to a different combo. And I think that's really cool, and it forces you to pay a lot more attention and learn how these moves mesh together. One method of dodging a particular string might work in a vacuum, but it becomes problematic if the boss decides to mix in one of its other attacks that closes off the angle you were moving through to dodge. I like it a lot. It really forces you to pay attention to each individual attack, not just in the string, but how it could be combined with any of the other attacks the boss has. But the problem is specifically with these daggers on this boss. There are a number of attack lines he can go down that you can dodge without getting hit, but if you stay near him or ever try to follow up on certain lines, there's always just a chance he pulls out the daggers and it becomes impossible to dodge them. They come out insanely quickly. Even if you dodge the first one, the second one follows up and hits you before your dodge comes off cooldown again. And they really just can't be avoided. I've tried more approaches than I can count, and almost all of them would result in you getting nicked by the daggers every so often. And that's one of the really infuriating things, is it's not even consistent. So the game will sometimes teach you, hey, don't do that. This boss did it with the very first set of attacks, where you quickly dodge the fast attack, and then you start dodging for the second attack, but he's holding it. So you dodge, you put your dodge on cooldown, and then he drops the weapon on you, and you get splattered. And he's teaching you, hey, don't do that. You have to pay attention, you have to time your dodges at the right moment. If these daggers consistently came out and hurt you, then it would teach you, okay, look, you just can't go in here. That's not a thing you're allowed to do. But he doesn't always use the daggers, because he's switching to different attacks, or he's completing the initial string. So that inconsistently makes it really annoying, because you'll be sitting there thinking, look, he's locked in the exhausted animation. I should run up there and get some hits in. But you can't, because while you might get away with it sometimes, at some point or another, he's going to take the daggers out and he's going to hit you with them. And if you're trying to complete the boss without getting hit, that's obviously a problem. I did find one approach that you won't see me do here, that I think you might be able to get away with, but it's not very satisfying, because it involves kind of like messing with the AI so that the boss just doesn't do the move, not actually a way to dodge the move. So after he opens with that really fast swing that you have to just immediately dodge, you get in close to him, you can sneak in a light attack, and then he'll wind up for the super slow follow-up. You dodge that really slow attack, and then there's a spot on his flank that you can position where, at least as far as I know, it seems like he won't use the daggers if you stand on this one spot. The reason why I don't do it here, even though getting in those light attacks would significantly speed up the fight, is that it's really hard to find that exact spot every time. So it ends up being a really big risk if you're going for a no-hit kill, because if you mess up even a little bit, there's a chance he's going to pull the daggers out, and then you're going to get hit. And that's my main problem with this boss. If you want to get through it without getting hit, you're forced to play in an incredibly passive, boring style, specifically so that this single move isn't used against you. Every other attack the boss has can be reliably dodged. The only one, aside from the quick daggers, that you won't see me dodge here is his whirlwind thing. He'll spin around with two blades, and it looks like it might be impossible to avoid, but you actually can do it reliably. It's definitely his scariest and most dangerous non-dagger move, but if you pay close attention, it's kind of an illusion. There are only 3 hits that go out. The first one's pretty fast, and then you have to briefly pause before dodging the second one, and then you have to take a fairly significant pause before dodging the third. So if you see this coming out and you start panicking and you just spam dodge as fast as you can, it is going to hit you and it is going to kill you. You actually have to give just like the briefest of pauses in between these attacks landing, and if you do that, you can avoid it. The annoying thing is that your positioning when this move comes out is incredibly important. You have to have a bit of distance from him, and you need to immediately roll away from him. otherwise, the times at which the whirlwind will hit you can get too close together for your dodge to come off cooldown. And other than that, you'll be able to see me dodge all of his attacks in this video. Again, not counting the daggers. Maybe I missed something. Maybe there is some way to consistently position that allows you to dodge those daggers too, but I wasn't able to find it. And it results in a fight that's really boring and really unfun. So you are basically forced to stay at the edge of his range, you wait for the super slow overhead swing and the jumping attacks, and punish those 2 moves. Those are the only ones I found that you can safely attack him after, because every other move has a chance for the daggers to come out, and sooner or later they will hit you. And it's really a shame, because without that, this fight would be really fast-paced, it'd be very back and forth. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot. Instead, it feels like a massive grind, and it feels more like I was trying to abuse the AI as best I could, instead of being engaged and immersed in the fight, like how I was on the previous bosses. I probably should have said earlier, this pretty much only applies to soul level 1 runs, no-hit runs, that sort of thing. I know the boss doesn't have super high poise, so if you're not massively underleveled like me, you can just do strong attacks and jumping attacks and all that to stun the boss, and that'll also chew through his HP way faster, so you probably won't even have to worry about the dagger attacks at that point. But what I really like about the Souls games is knowing that no matter what gear I have, or what weapon, or what level I am, as long as I'm good enough, I can theoretically kill the boss. And as long as I'm good enough, I can theoretically never get hit. This boss really threatens that idea. It's technically doable, but it's miserable to do so, and the daggers don't feel like a cool, hard move that you have to learn, they just feel like cheap bullshit. Maybe I'm in the minority on not liking this boss. I think I probably am. And I like everything else about the fight. The location's really cool. Seeing the castle in the background is sick. The model of the boss is really cool. And I love the idea of it conjuring these different weapons in the middle of the fight, and you have to learn all these different weapon attacks and ranges as you get further and further into it. The undodgeable daggers really just ruin it for me. I'm still having a great time with the game though, and I'm looking forward to seeing the other bosses. Aside from this one instance, it feels like they've really stepped up the boss design, and I've been enjoying it a lot so far.